Good morning, everyone. I would like to call to order our City Council work session for this Tuesday, October 27th, 2020. Tara, would you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Luttrell?
Here.
Turner?
Yes.
Fire Robin?
Here.
King?
Here.
Powers?
Here.
At this time, Mr. Sora, would you like to introduce the staff and our guests?
Yes, Mayor, I'd be glad to. We have the Director of Sullivan County Regional Health Department, Mr. Gary Mays, with us today. We also have Dr. Stephen May, who's the Chief Medical Officer with the Sullivan County Department of Health, and they'll both be giving council an update here momentarily on the status of the COVID-19 virus in our community. We also have with us Tim Beavers, Tara Music, Danielle Smith, Shane Varney, John Luttrell, and Terry Napier as other members participating from staff.
Thank you.
Tom Anderson.
And Tom Anderson. I'm sorry, Tom, you slipped in there late.
Well, I was having trouble with this hyperlink stuff. So anyway, I got there.
Glad to have you, Tom.
This time, I'd like to ask our attorney, Ms. Danielle Smith, to discuss the necessity of conducting electronic meetings.
Certainly, as you guys all know, that we have been granted the ability to conduct meetings electronically through an executive order of Governor Lee. One condition of meeting electronically is that if a member of council or staff is attending by audio only, they're asked to identify themselves by name and position when they speak. So in other words, if you can't tell from video who's speaking, we need to be sure to identify ourselves. In order to proceed with meeting electronically, the City Council should make a determination that meeting electronically is necessary to protect the health, safety, and welfare of Tennesseans in light of the COVID-19 outbreak. At this time, it would be appropriate to have a vote on that matter. If there's any discussion that needs to be had, you can have discussion beforehand, but otherwise I think it's sufficient if council indicates by yes or no whether they think it's necessary to meet electronically at this time.
Okay, thank you. Tara, would you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Luttrell?
Yes.
Turner?
Yes.
Fire Robin?
Yes.
King?
Yes.
Powers?
Yes.
Okay, this time I'd like to turn it back over to Mr. Sora to introduce our guest.
Yes, Mayor, as I mentioned earlier, we have with us today Mr. Gary Mays, who's Director of Sullivan County Regional Health Department, as well as Dr. Stephen May, Chief Medical Director with the Health Department. And as we were early on in this virus, they were meeting with us at our work session to brief council on the status of the disease. We moved away from that in late summer, but I think now, given the growth of the disease in our community, it's important to bring them back and discuss this with council and give council an opportunity to ask questions of these two gentlemen. So with that, Gary or Dr. May, whoever's going to go first.
Okay, well, I will kick it off, City Manager Sora, and thank you for the introduction. And I think I really want to thank Mayor Luttrell and Bristol Council for inviting us and giving us an opportunity to speak with you and your citizens in regard to COVID and the current status. And I'll kick it over to Dr. May in just a few minutes. He can go over the numbers and statistics, but I think we want to allocate as much time as the council may have for questions, considering your knowledge and the experience that we've had together with COVID. There's probably not a lot of a good use of time explaining where we've been and what the disease is. So we'll go over some numbers. Obviously, Sullivan County is classified as a rapid riser. It's a current nomenclature we've gotten from the CDC. We are in a category red by the White House reports. And I can tell you that we're monitoring well over 1,000 people every day at the Sullivan County Health Department, along with our positivity. Probably on the public facing side, our records aren't updated, but as of this morning, we picked up around 50 more positives. So we're well over 1,000 active cases in Sullivan County as of around 8:30 this morning. And we'll be loading more positives into the system throughout the day and night. I want to also begin by thanking our staff at Sullivan County Health Department. They're working long hours over extended months. We've never experienced this before at our health department. Usually when we have an outbreak, it usually lasts 6 or 8 weeks. And we're not accustomed to sustained of months of this type of response of 10 and 14-hour days of staff, and they continue to serve with passion and energy. And they astonish me at times at the workload that they're doing and serving our citizens. We're getting about 2,000 phone calls a week just on COVID topic from our citizens at our call center. And that gives us a lot of good information. Even though our role is to provide information, we get good intel back from our citizens, and we're grateful for our staff and all the hard work they do. Also, I want to take a moment and remind the council that we have a mayor's meeting on Friday with the Sullivan County mayors and our city managers. Bill Sora participates those in a valuable contributor, and Mayor Luttrell does. And we have some very, I think, enthusiastic and energized meetings talking about our COVID response and how we work together in Sullivan County with our 3 governments. Also, remind you that we meet with Bristol, Tennessee school system every week with Dr. Tudor and her staff, and they are doing an amazing job. And I think our case rates and our experience in our schools bear that out, that the schools in Bristol, Tennessee are doing an amazing good job keeping our children safe and support and teachers, support staff and teachers as well. So just want to remind you of those events that occur weekly in our meeting in response to COVID. And of course, Ballot Health System is a big part of where we are in terms of response right now. And I will say the rising case numbers is a very deep concern for us at Sullivan County Health Department. And we don't know where the peak is at this point. We see no indication from our indicators that Dr. May will recover that we're slowing down any. And it is disconcerting. It's disconcerting about our position, our status with our hospital system, and versus the capacity versus our trending case rate in Tri-Cities, not only in Sullivan County. So those are our 2 top concerns that we have in Sullivan County. So without further ado, I'll kick it over to Dr. May to talk specifically about where we are in stats, and then we'll take questions if that's okay, Mayor Luttrell.
Okay, I'll go ahead and just kick off some of our basic numbers. At present, we're dealing with over 3,600 cases, and our case rate is at 364 cases per 100,000 over the last week. Our White House indicator is at 100, so that puts us in the red. We've currently experienced 47 deaths. We're looking at 6% of those cases that will wind up in the hospital, and that's an important number. So as the population numbers increase, you can count on 6% that's going to wind up being hospitalized, and between 1 and 1.5% that will die. We're monitoring, as Gary said, 1,100 cases that we're following for disease. When we look at how the disease is scattered within the county, Bristol is currently at about 18%, Blumpville 15%, and Kingsport has had some rising numbers with 54%. We continue to deal with our clusters in a number of nursing homes and faith-based institutions, and 3 of our schools, and 3 businesses. Now our R0 is 1.16 currently, which means that we're still rising in our number of cases. Our positivity rate has gone dramatically up. We're now looking at 19.4% positivity rate of our test, and we're doing about 500 tests a day throughout Sullivan County. When we look at our hospital system, it is now being stretched and challenged. They have currently right now 178 COVID patients within the hospital and 16 beds within the entire region. for COVID. When we look at our Sullivan County beds, it's also extremely tight, looking at very, very limited ICU beds, and they are starting to institute their surge plans in an effort to ensure that they have enough staffing in beds to handle the number of cases that are coming in. So when we look at our 4 battlefronts, testing, we're doing a lot more testing here at Sullivan County. The second piece to that is the isolation and quarantine management. And we're ramping up a lot of staff this week to try to deal with these increased numbers of cases. On the vaccine front, we are preparing and gearing up to give vaccine, but we don't anticipate really getting any vaccine much before mid-December or possibly into the first of the year. And so that brings us back to the other main leg or battlefront that we've got to deal with, and that is keeping these safety measures in place. Now is not the time to become complacent as you go out. The disease is being spread in the community on a wide basis. So we need to encourage continued masking. We need to continue with the 6-foot distancing, and keeping these safety measures in place is going to be critical, and looking at least discouraging large gatherings where we can see high amounts of transmission when people get together and do not follow the safety measures. So that's my report for right now. I'll be glad to take any questions.
Dr. May, is there? Go ahead, Chad.
Okay, sorry, Malin. I was just going to maybe ask you to, for those that are watching, I know you've mentioned it to us several times, but those that are watching, if they start feeling like they may have symptoms, could you tell them exactly what they should do?
Right. If they develop any type of common symptoms, so cough, cold, congestion, runny nose, fever, fatigue, particularly loss of taste or smell, then we encourage everyone to go for a test. We have testing available through the health department 5 days a week. Ballot also has testing sites available by calling their facilities for testing. You can call 279-2777, and we will have someone there who can answer your questions, and then if need be, set you up for a test. And we try to get those tests done within the same day and get the testing sent out and then resulted within 48 to 72 hours through our system. Now, other laboratories take sometimes 3 or 4 days to get the lab test back, but we are working very hard to try to get the test that we do through the health department back within 48 hours.
Also, Dr. May, to clarify on that, you do not have to be symptomatic to get a test. Is that correct?
That is correct. We will test anyone who desires to be tested.
So
Wednesday
if you think you've been
tested.
Thank you.
Dr. May, could you talk about a little, we were talking about this earlier prior to getting on the call, that we're showing 18 hospitalizations in Sullivan County. And when we're talking about with Ballad of how many beds are available, I mean, they're showing, I think we're at 166 or something like that are hospitalized. Is there a certain section of where we're seeing more hospitalizations than others? Obviously, if we're in Sullivan County, we've got 18. It just seems, are these coming from maybe the Virginia hospitals, or do you know?
Well, Ballad reports their numbers for their entire system, so
Right.
that does extend into Southwest Virginia. We actually track the number of Sullivan County residents that are currently in the hospital and keep up with those numbers and also those individual Sullivan County deaths.
Right.
I think 18 is the highest number we've ever had hospitalized. If it's not the highest, it's one of the highest. And also another factor, it may be technical here, but I think it is important to understand for the council and the city manager is that the average length of stay of an ICU patient is 12 days. So what that means to us is, and that's ICU stay, that doesn't mean the acute care stay, and that doesn't include the recuperation of the patient. But what that means is that's an extended length of time that ties up a unit. So those admissions last for a very long time. Whereas Dr. May used an example earlier, a hip replacement is 3 days. And these patients are in the hospital for a much longer time because of their acuity. So it consumes a lot more medical resources than normal, I guess, is the bottom line.
Could I ask you also to speak about therapies? Of course, the president just had a certain type of therapy. I think it was Regeneron or something along those lines. What is available to us in our health system? Could you go into that just a little bit?
Gary, I'll be glad to help with that. We do have Remdesivir, which is the antiviral agent available. Although we'll have to watch our supply, it is not an unlimited supply. Of course, we have plenty of ventilators and oxygen therapy. Where we're getting short is the availability of ICU care. They also are using proning, which is a way that you turn the patient on their stomach to breathe a little bit better. And they also have the auxiliary respiratory treatments. But they also have convalescent plasma that they're using, but we do not have the monoclonal antibodies that the president received. But the convalescent plasma is being used for those with the most serious disease. And we also have the steroid treatment, dexamethasone, and other steroids that can be used to replace that. So those are the mainstays of therapy now that is available within our system.
And is that, generally speaking, would your doctor, if you did, for instance, a drive-through and you learned that you do have the COVID, would your doctor be prescribing any of these, like for home treatment, where you would not have to go into an office, or do all of these require you to come to the hospital or an office visit?
Those treatments are reserved for moderate to severe illness. So number one, you have to have falling oxygen levels, which tells them that you're getting into trouble. You will be admitted if you have a low oxygen saturation on presentation. And then depending on your status, they'll give you Remdesivir and dexamethasone, but you have to be in pretty severe condition to require those. You do not want to give dexamethasone in the early stages because it can actually make conditions worse. You want to save it for when you're in the worst shape because it has its own set of complications and side effects.
I had a question about capacity. I know early on our health department really had to build up capacity. So and I know y'all been able to bring on staff and train folks, et cetera. So where do you feel like you are at this point, particularly with the extended time frame? And looking toward, I know y'all are already talking about the vaccine and how that's going to work. So where do you feel like you are?
Yeah, that's a good question. We looked at our active caseload as a way to drive our capacity. So we were tooled 600 to 700 active cases. We're well over 1,000 right now. So we have had to do some rapid recalibrations this week. And we're instituting those this week, throughout the week, to try and get where we need to be for around 12 or 1,300 cases. And we continue to onboard people almost every day. contact tracers or DIS, disease investigation folks, and or LPNs or RNs. And we've contracted with a vendor out of Florida for travel nurses and such. So we have expanded capacity at the health department a lot. And I don't know how many FTEs that is right now, but bottom line is we were tooled up for 600 to 800. Now we have 1,200. We're recalibrating rapidly to catch back up. So that's where we are on our contact tracing and case investigation. On the vaccine front, we were told to be ready to have distribution plans by November. And we have coordination effort in place with personnel in place, working on storage and logistics and distribution. The state of Tennessee submitted their plan to the CDC for vaccine distribution in phases of how that would be given out to the public. Other than really what's been reported on the national news, we have no knowledge of when vaccine will be here in Sullivan County, but we are working every day, almost as much energy on that as our response, getting ready for the vaccine and how we store it, how we give it out, trying to connect with key partners in the community. We don't want to be the only one given vaccine, of course. There's 158,000 people in Sullivan County, assuming all want the vaccine. And so we're working with our pharmacy partners, all of our healthcare partners, to incorporate them into the plan for administration. So hopefully we'll be as ready as we can be, and we'll have plenty of safe and effective vaccine.
Thank you.
Gary, on the report, under two categories, one, the hospitalization and the deaths, the 213 hospitalizations, is that the number since this all began?
Yes.
In Sullivan County?
It is.
And then the deaths are 47, and that's all Sullivan County, correct?
Yes, I think since March or February, yes.
Yeah. So if you look at those two numbers, that's pretty high percentage rate of deaths out of the hospitalizations.
I believe it's a little over in between. It's about 1.4 or 1.3%, I believe.
Yeah. It's pretty alarming.
Yes, sir, it is.
Yeah, another thing just to point out from my understanding for ICU beds, it's not just having the beds, but it's the staff who are trained to take care of ICU patients. So that's an issue, even with surge plans, et cetera, where they can add beds, but being sure they have enough trained staff to do ICU patients. Is that correct?
Yes, and we had a meeting with Ballard Health Systems yesterday, and indeed that was their concern, is the staffing issues associated with taking care of the COVID patients. So
I have another question on, so it's not just us that are in the red, it is the whole state. So do we have, is the state looking at different measures to try to work with the public to bring the numbers down? Do we have options to pursue? What do we do to go beyond where we are now, or to keep emphasizing, or whatever? Do we have other alternatives, or what are our options?
Well, most of our discussion right now, of course, has been with the Tennessee Department of Health, and that's centered around vaccine and the COVID response, contact tracing. We haven't had a lot of communication about strategic direction beyond what we're doing now, and re-emphasizing what we're doing now. I would imagine that flow would come from Nashville to the governors, to the mayor, or from the governor to the mayors and local governments. But we haven't detected or learned of any change of direction as to what we're doing right now.
I believe our current mask mandate is set to expire the 31st, if I'm correct. Is that right, Bill?
Yes, sir, it is.
County.
If you recall, I think Mayor Venable is looking at one of two extensions, one that would go through the end of November, and then another order that would go through the end of the year. I think that's fairly accurate, Dr. May or Gary?
Those are the two that are in consideration. And of course, we're working on an advertising campaign to try to get this message out. It's now is not the time to become complacent in wearing your mask and maintaining your distancing. And we really need to be discouraging any type of large group gatherings.
Any more questions?
I'll just note, I'm looking at Tara Music, who is the only one on wearing a mask, and that is, I assume, because she is in an office with other folks. So just appreciating that demonstration of how important it is to be cautious at all times in all settings. So thank you, Tara, for demonstrating that and helping communicate that importance to the public.
I've got one other question. When you were talking about large gatherings, could you be, what are you considering right now as far as large gatherings?
I think any gathering where you've got groups of people coming from different places that's not in the same household is at risk. So that's the basic definition. And if you cannot maintain distancing and masking, then it is a high risk event and prone to spread of the disease.
Could I ask you also too, someone who has had COVID, I think the general thoughts are that they probably have antibodies and can't get it within at least a small time period, and that may be uncertain at this point. But someone who has had COVID a month ago and they're free of symptoms now, can they be a carrier of COVID to give it to someone who has not had it?
All right, we're talking about two different scenarios here. The first scenario is how long do they carry the virus with the initial infection? And we found that usually for those who have very mild symptoms to no symptoms, the viral carriage stops after about 10 days. And if you're ill with it, by the time that you're feeling well and your fever falls for 24 hours, you are no longer infectious to other people. Now, the other situation that we're dealing with is what's called reinfection. And we're now starting to identify cases throughout the world and in Tennessee and even in Sullivan County of a person who was infected, recovered, got well, and then 3 months later they've gotten sick again and their test becomes positive again. So we're still learning about reinfection rates, and those people are just as infectious as they were the first time. So we still have to implement them back into quarantine or into isolation and then do a contact investigation on reinfections. And we use the cutoff with that currently at about 3 months. We feel like when you do become infected, we know the antibodies last about 3 months. But after that, if you develop a second infection, we are now identifying that to be true and is being seen widespread across the United States and in Europe.
I would just like to say how much we appreciate Dr. May, you being here, and Gary, you being here. We know that y'all have been inundated throughout this process, but especially the past 2 or 3 weeks have become very challenging. And having said that, it's now more important than ever, based on what you've told us, if I understand correctly, that we view this as we did in March and April, that we've got to still be very mindful. It is easy to become complacent. There's a certain part of comfort, if you can imagine, that many of us feel trying to get back to what we desire most, and that's normalcy. But the masks are still important. If not, I've had some around me that have debated the whole issue of masks. And, my thought about masks is that regardless of what your feelings are, it's a courtesy at this point. It's a courtesy that we extend to one another, and that we hope is going to be extended to ourselves. Along with that is to social distance. With the holidays coming on, it's very hard. We have family that live out of town, and the great debate is what about the holidays? And my husband and I both have some pre-existing conditions that are concerning. So I think to be very mindful in going into the holidays. And I'll finish by saying this: we have a kindergarten age grandchild, and we want him to be in school. We want him to have that social engagement. We want him to begin his education on a best foot. And for us to keep our children in school, for us to keep our businesses open and operating at the greater capacity, we've got to be mindful of just these few basic elements that Dr. Mays and Gary Mays have shared with us. And to wear our mask, to social distance, to not jump into large gatherings, to cough into our elbows, and to wash our hands. And I'm sure that our marketing campaign that we're doing in collaboration, the city and the county health department, will emphasize that. And people are looking to all of us to promote a positive message. And right now, it's very important that we all follow these different strategic implementations. So, we're not out of the woods yet. We've still got people around us. If we want to keep our businesses open, if we want to keep our kids in school, we've got to still practice those basic health elements.
Thank you, Councilwoman Powers. That was kind words, and I would say commentary that is spot on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else from anyone? Dr. May, Gary, we certainly appreciate all that you do every day, and we so value the updates that you provide to us. So with that, I guess we'll let you guys go and continue your efforts in fighting this disease.
Thank you, Mayor Luttrell, and also thank you, City Manager Bill Sara, for your support and help. And anytime you want us to come back, we'll certainly make every effort to be there.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Dr. May. Thank you very much. Appreciate what you all do.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to the next item. That's residential housing incentives and utility tap fee holiday. Mr. Sora.
Yes, Mayor, as this is, we've talked about the topic of incentivizing residential construction now for several months, and we brought different initiatives for you, before you singularly. Right now, we've got an item in our agenda for second reading in November, but also this month we wanted to discuss with you the opportunity for a utility tap fee holiday. We've discussed this briefly in previous meetings. We're talking in terms of having a 3-month holiday beginning at the first of the year. This is usually when contractors would secure permits in advance of the construction season. This would apply primarily to single lots that have been undeveloped, that already have utilities in front of them and really not suitable for our utility infrastructure incentive package, but would help a developer that's looking at single lots in different locations, would help incentivize perhaps the use of these incentives to foster construction during the next year. Tim Beavers is with us tonight or today, and he's going to detail this issue for you.
Yes, good morning. Thank you, Mr. Sora. Good morning, council members. As Mr. Sora stated, we have looked at different incentives for residential construction and working through those. One of those incentive items were to look at the potential of having a tap fee holiday for residential construction. Let's go to the next slide here. Can everybody see the slides, I hope?
There you go.
Yeah. So the elements that we had discussed as staff on the tap fee holiday would be, as Mr. Sora stated, 3 months from January 1st, 2021 to March 31, 2021. The reason we picked those 3 months is that is typically when we see people builders purchase tap fees for construction, spring construction, summer construction of residential homes. Also, the construction would be limited to a new single-family home inside the corporate limit. So we are trying to limit this to new single-family homes, not existing homes wanting to tie on our water and sewer systems inside the limit. And this is to, once again, try to further incentivize residential construction inside the corporate limits. Nominal fee would have to be charged for the water and sanitary sewer taps, and we suggested $5, a total of $10. And this is because our city code currently requires us to charge a fee for the taps. Unless we change that city code, there has to be some amount we would charge for the taps. The thing to go along with this is we just don't want people to purchase taps for future construction. We want them to purchase taps for construction that begins fairly soon. So we would, element we like would begin construction with it when, let me start again, would like to have these taps go along with a contractor beginning construction with 1 year of the conclusion of the tap fee holiday. So basically you would have until March 31st of 2022 to begin construction of that home should you take advantage of the tap fee holiday period. If the contractor failed to begin construction within that by March 31 of 2022, then they would be responsible for paying the normal tap fee rate for that home construction. Once again, we're just trying to, on this, limit people from coming and buying 50 taps and having it open-ended down the road. So also the program we're suggesting not made available to subdivisions developed utilizing the sanitary and water material incentive program. That program where we reimburse or pay for the materials to the developer once they have been installed and accepted, we recover that money into our utility fund through the purchase of the individual tap fees. So that's how we offset that monetary cost of the water and sewer materials. And thus we'd suggest not utilizing this program inside subdivisions that have taken advantage of that utility incentive program. Last year, fiscal 2020, just a few statistics. About $7,800 in water taps were purchased for single family residential homes, and about $12,000 in sewer taps were purchased for single family residential homes. And looking at our funds, we believe that this could support trying a trial period here the first year to see what use of the program we would have, and that it would not impact our current water and sewer rates by not collecting those tap fees for single family construction. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I think this is a program that if implemented, we could go back and look at this time next year, see if it was successful, and then you could implement a holiday at any point in the future if this is something that worked for us at this time. If it's something that council wants to move forward with, then we'll place this program in the form of a resolution, we'll have it on your November 10th agenda.
What is the current charge for, what would be the savings to the developer?
It's $800 for water and $1,000 for sewer, sanitary sewer.
Okay.
I think this would be something great for us to pursue. I think it shows that we're progressive, we're open-minded, we're encouraging residential development. There is, if I understand correctly, Tim, you said the program is not available in a subdivision because that is already incentivized, correct? To some degree.
We would suggest not allowing it to be utilized where the subdivision has been developed utilizing the water and sanitary sewer material incentive program. And that's because we would try to recover those funds for that program from the tap fees.
We currently don't have subdivisions that have availed themselves of that. So if you have an existing subdivision now, then, and this is really where this program really offers its most advantage to a developer. If you've got a vacant lot, say in Middlebrook, for example, the water and sewer is already there. This gives a developer an opportunity to acquire that lot and do a single family dwelling on that lot, and then take advantage of this tap fee holiday to advance that project forward.
Well, it's a savings of $1,790.
That's a fact.
I'd like to see this brought forward as a resolution.
Yes.
I agree. Yes.
I do too. I agree.
Okay. We will formalize this then and bring it forward then on our November 10th meeting.
Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, we'll move on to the next item, a review of rules and procedures of City Council.
Yes, Mayor, periodically we bring this back as a staff, and we always do this in a work session to discuss with City Council things that they like and don't like about how they do their business, and that's set forth in the rules and procedures. We last visited this in early 2019. Certainly, Mayor Luttrell, Vice Mayor Turner have joined us since that time. You've been on board now almost 18 months, so you've had an opportunity to look at the rules and procedures. You see how that impacts how City Council does its business. So this is just an opportunity to bring it back to you. Are there things that you like? Are there things that you would like to tweak? Are there things that are dated? For example, we need to make a housekeeping change in this, in that at the time this was approved in early 2019, we're still having our work sessions at 5:30 p.m. We've since moved those to 11 a.m. We would go back and clean that up. One item that you will need to consider, not necessarily now, probably not now, but going forward sometime over the next year, you'll need to consider how you select a mayor and vice mayor in the post time after the new election. If you recall, City Council election now has been moved from May of 2021 to November of 2022. So that would impact, with that new council then being seated in January of 2023. So that really impacts down the road how you select mayor and vice mayor. That's all part of a charter change. So there may be other things that you want to look at in the charter. So I think over the coming year, you need to look at those at those two items, at least selection of mayor and vice mayor, and how you want to do that going forward, and how that impacts the council that's seated on January of 2023. But there may be other items that you want to look at also. I would encourage you to read this document. Like I said, we can make housekeeping changes very quickly, but there may be other things that, and especially mayor and vice mayor, as you all have been involved in this now for a period of time, you see things that you would like to see changed in this document. Again, it simply guides how you all conduct your business.
So do you need any comment to do the housekeeping, or is that a given?
No, I think that's a given. And if that's the only change that you all want to make at this point, then we would simply have that item on a consent agenda at our November meeting. I suggest you actually take another month to look at this, and we'll have another conversation about it at our November work session, and then do the cleanup items in December. And later if you need to. Like I said, there's nothing magic about this. We want it to reflect how you want to conduct your business.
Would anybody, because to do a charter change, don't we have to ask for, doesn't that have to go to the state legislature?
It does, with a 4/5 approval of council to do that.
Right. And so with them going into session in January and not knowing, is that going to be virtual or are they going to be there in person? We don't really know just yet. Would anyone else on council be interested in going through the charter pretty much, not line by line, but subsect by subsect, to be sure that we have the charter right where we think it should be moving forward? So we only have to go to the legislature once for any charter changes that we might deem appropriate.
So, Lee, I think the thinking might be to do that, but not do it for this legislative session. That would give us more time and then be prepared to talk with them and get it. So by this time next year, they already be on board. But it would be appropriate to start that process and look at, and also talk to our attorney and see if she's seen anything or whatever, if there's anything else.
That's the thinking of staff. I think for the calendar year of 2021, you're set to go. The selection of mayor and vice mayor, nothing really changes.
Right.
So everything but you do need to certainly have that conversation about the 2023 January seating of a new council, and how does the selection of mayor and vice mayor be handled by that new council at that time. You've got ample time to do that. We bring this up now to give you ample time to have that discussion. And if there are other things that you want to look at in the charter while you're doing an opening, that's a good time to go ahead and have those conversations.
Great. Thank you for the clarity.
Anything else on this matter?
I'll just say that, I can't remember when we first did this document, but I have just had recent conversations about our city's professionalism, and just really appreciate some of these things are pretty important, and things that folks don't always think, even on nonprofit boards, in businesses, to look at yourselves and to look at how you conduct yourselves, et cetera, and be sure to have guidelines and standards, et cetera. So I just really appreciate that we did do this, that we do revisit on a regular basis, and that it gives us something we all agree on for how we conduct ourselves and what we value in the way that we operate. So appreciate that. And I'm glad we have another month, because I did not take enough time to really look through. And I know during the year, I know there was something we talked about putting in, and I can't remember what that was. So anyway, maybe that'll come back for remembering.
So how long are you saying that we have, as far as going through our charter to make these changes? If there's anything any of us feel like that we would like to talk about to change, when do you need that?
That needs to go before the Tennessee General Assembly for approval by private act during their 2022 session. So you really have until this time next year, and maybe even another month beyond that. Okay. It does require, I said a 4/5, it's a 2/3 majority, which equates to 4/5 of council would need to approve a resolution requesting the General Assembly to approve the charter change at that point. And then that goes to the General Assembly in the form of a private act request.
But Vince, to more directly, I would say by July, August, we ought to be talking about, because what you want, I might not want, or vice versa. So we've got to come to our consensus and be ready for that resolution and to talk with our legislators so they understand. And a lot of times I think it's pretty unremarkable taking private act charter changes, but they need to be able to explain it to their colleagues and peers if there's any questions, et cetera. So.
Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, ready to move on to the next item. Proposed right-of-way abandonment, Leona Street.
Yes, Mayor, and I think Tim Beaver's going to put this up on your screen. Leona Street is a public street that was originally platted as a T shape in 1943. It ultimately developed more as an L. And Tim, if you can advance that a little bit, so let's go to the next. There you go. So you can see Leona Street as it exits East State Street and then makes the easterly turn. We've received a request from a Mr. Kenneth Dunn, who owns the property at 800 West Mary, which is the large tract of land on the west side of the abandonment request. He has since acquired the property at 801 Leona Street, which is on the east side, and proposes to develop a single-family home on that lot once it's recombined. And this unopened right-of-way sits in the middle of that, as you can see. There's no public purpose to be served to retain that. We would not be extending the public street through that area. Typically, what is done with a proposed abandonment, the right-of-way is split between adjacent property owners. This is the adjacent property is owned all by one owner, both the 801 Leona and the 800 West Mary. So it's staff recommendation that we do abandon this unopened right-of-way, as it serves no future public purpose. And that gives this individual an opportunity to combine the properties through a combination plat and go forward with the single family construction. Tim, do you have anything to add to that?
No, that you covered it very well, Mr. Sora, and that's a picture currently of the unopened right-of-way. Mr. Dunn has cleared the trees in that area. So as Mr. Sora stated, there's not a public purpose for this unopened street and just a right-of-way. We do request that a 15-foot utility easement be retained for a power line along the front here, colored in light blue. Planning Commission at their October 19th meeting did forward a favorable recommendation to City Council for abandonment of the street with retention of that 15-foot utility easement. And with that, we'll answer any questions you may have.
To our knowledge, there's never been public improvements on this section.
I guess no comments. We'll move on to the next item.
We'll formally present that then to City Council at the November 10th, and this would be an abandonment done by resolution. Okay. The next item does deal with the renaming of street. As council's aware, Centerpoint Development at Exit 74, which currently has the Chrysler Jeep Ram dealership there, there's going to be a relocation of the road, which is a joint project between the Tennessee Department of Transportation and the developer to relocate a portion of Island Road. There will be a new road constructed between Island Road and West State Street. And there is a desire by the developer to rename that to Center Point Drive. Now, as staff looks at naming requests, they look at it from a 911 perspective in terms of similarity of names that might create confusion in our responders responding to emergency on that particular street. So we do have one private drive in Bristol known as Center Drive. And this is off of Highway 421. And it's the access road to the center, which is currently owned by Electromechanical. So when staff discovered this, they talked to the developer of CenterPoint and suggested that they talk to the owner of the center about a potential name change there, so it would not conflict with the 911 registry of a CenterPoint Drive, a newly named CenterPoint Drive. The owner of the center was receptive to that and requested the name of Crest Point Drive. Now, this can be done by resolution since it's a private drive. It does not change its status in terms of public dedication. There's no public funds that are spent maintaining this road. It would simply change the name to Crest Point Drive, and this is the name, once again, selected by Electromechanical. At some point in the future, when the new road at Centerpoint is constructed, then there would be a formal dedication of that roadway and a naming of that roadway, and that would be done by ordinance due to the public nature of that street. So, Tim, do you have anything to add to that?
Just a couple of things. One, if you all so choose and approve this renaming, the Crest Point Drive name would become effective December 31st of this year, and that is per the request of the Electromechanical Corporation, so they have time to change the necessary items as far as new address. The Planning Commission did consider this street name change at their October 19th meeting and did forward a favorable recommendation to City Council to rename Center Drive to Crest Point Drive. And with that, can answer any questions.
Is there anyone else on, I know that road's coming through, this isn't going to affect anyone else on the Center Drive as far as changing their address, correct?
The center is the only property that this private drive serves.
Right.
So no, there's would be no impact there.
No, I mean, and also the other for the Chrysler store.
No,
Well,
that's a new roadway that would connect Island Road to West State Street.
Okay.
Right now, the Jeep dealership is temporarily addressed off Island Road northeast, but they would, and they're aware and want the address change once the road is completed. So they're aware of creating a new address at that time.
Makes sense.
We'll have, unless there's a difference of opinion there, we'll have this on the as a resolution on your November 10th agenda also. We'll probably have this item just cleaned up on the consent agenda.
Good. Okay, guess move on to the next item. Rezoning of property 1741 and 1745 King College Road.
Yes, Mayor, this comes as a rezoning request from the owner of 1745. This is the site of the Cornerstone Chapel, which I think is no longer operational. And there is a desire from the trustee to rezone the property from R3 multifamily residential to B1B neighborhood shopping and commercial district, which is consistent with that general area of King College Road. Also, the 1741 property, as staff was evaluating the zoning of the surrounding property, found that 1741 had a split zoning with a very small portion, about 0.16 acres, being also zoned R3. So staff has approached the owner of 1741 about the possibility of rezoning that 0.16 acres to also B1B, and this is in agreement by this was concurred by the owner as a desire to go ahead and clean up the zoning on that property. So, Tim, do you want to detail this issue and also talk about the permitted uses in the B1B versus the R3?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Sora. This is a request that come in from Laura Martirano, and it is to rezone this property, the Cornerstone, like Mr. Sora indicated, the Cornerstone Chapel property at 1745 King College Road, from R3 multifamily to B1B neighborhood shopping office. As Mr. Sora indicated, we did see a piece adjacent to this, a little triangle, and I'll show you in a second, at 1741, owned by Michael Harris. The property, it's used as single family residential that needed to have some cleanup to go from R3 to B1B also, and Mr. Harris indicated his acceptance of doing that. There are approximately 0.16 acres of the Harris property, that single family home, and then 2.81 acres of the Cornerstone Chapel property. And once again, the single family home on the Harris property. And there was a church, hasn't been operational for at least a year, at the Cornerstone Chapel property there at 1745. This property, you can see it in red, the outline. The bigger piece here is the Cornerstone Chapel, the 1745 property. And then you see this small triangle here of property on the 1741, the Harris property. Makes a little more sense. This is looking at the Harris property. There's the single family home. Basically, if you can follow the cursor, the rezoning area would be sort of this triangle area here, of driveway and some of the front yard there. This is a straight on shot of the Cornerstone Chapel property. Looking at the zoning map, this is why it makes more sense. You see the yellow here is B1B. This pinkish color is R3. You have some green R2 and some purplish R1A. But this little triangle piece is the Harris property. If this was rezoned B1B, it would leave a little triangle here of R3, and it just made sense to clean that up at the time of this rezoning request. This is a future land use map. You can see the yellow area is low density residential. This hatched pink area is what would be neighborhood commercial area. So that fits in right with the B1B, the neighborhood commercial area. And then the orange color is multifamily, high density residential area. Little blue in the corner is institutional, and that's Holston View Elementary School property there. But from looking at the future land use map, you do see this does split the property, but based on the policies of the future land use map, when parcels are split like that, you can consider either or zoning on that piece of property. And you can see how this corridor has, from going back to the zoning, has existing B1B already up through a portion of it. You have over here B1B, and it makes sense when looking at this future land use that would occur along this corridor, continue at some point along this corridor. So based on that, looking at the R3 permitted uses currently, you have the multifamily, you can read down through there, public parks, single family, duplex developments, home occupations, public libraries, bed and breakfast. So that's your R3 development. And by special use, daycare centers, churches, tennis, golf clubs, assisted living facilities. Looking at uses allowed in a B1B, you do go to, once again, this is our neighborhood shopping and office. You do have single family and duplexes, once again, are allowed. You don't see here multifamily is not allowed anymore in those, but you do have some retail trade limited to this type of business here. Gas stations, food and beverage stores, appliance, electronics, sporting goods. Have finance and insurance except for many warehouses. You can read down through there, some professional and technical services, healthcare, social services, repair and maintenance, limited to electronics and household goods. religious, grant-making, civic, professional, and similar organizations, parking lots. By special use, you'll have that same list as you saw in the R3 zones. And just a little bit on the background, the applicant does want to open a child counseling center in the church facility, which is not an allowed use currently in the R3 zone, but is an allowed use under the B1B zoning. Public notification, we put up the signs with the meeting date and location for the Planning Commission. Adjacent property owners were notified by letter, and we did receive 2 comment letters back. As of today, we've only had 2 comments, and both were in favor of the rezoning. That was via letter. Due to, staff's recommendation would be due to the adjacent B1B zone and the future land use map being consistent with that future land use map, that City Council approved the rezoning from the R3 to B1B. And we did present this at the October 19th Planning Commission meeting, and they voted unanimously to send a favorable recommendation to City Council for the rezoning. And with that, I'll be more than happy to answer any questions.
Tim, I'm just curious if, I know you said they should have put a child counseling center in, but so I'd gotten a call of asking, would it, like a methadone clinic be permitted on this piece of property if with this rezoning, if they chose to?
I'll have to research that. My recollection, and Danielle may remember off the top of her head, is that the methadone clinics or clinics like that are limited to our B3 or some industrial property.
Okay.
But I'll have to research that further to give you 100% accuracy on that.
Danielle, do you recall? I'm thinking that they were restricted to an Elm zoning.
I believe that's correct. They're addressed specifically in the zoning ordinance. So I think Tim has got it right, but again, we can confirm.
Okay.
That's a good point, Vince, because we need to remember that the zoning stands with the land, not with the ownership.
Right. And
whenever a zoning change takes place like this, while the intention at this point may be X, it could eventually transition to Y, which, was not the original understanding or intent of council. So we always need to bear in mind that zoning stands with the land, not with the owner.
what I was saying with the school and where this piece of property is located, that would be concern to me. So.
And we'll look that up and send Mr. Soar information about the methadone just to verify that. We'll have to dig through the ordinance.
Okay.
And make sure.
I saw hospitals and clinics and so forth in there, that it would not fall under that particular.
No, it definitely doesn't fall under this hospital, by special use permit.
Or they even limited health care and social assistance.
Yes, that's what we'll have to look up and make sure. But once again, I think that was in our manufacturing zones, industrial zones, is where we did allow the placement of those. And if they don't treat on site, I think there are some allowance in a B3 zone, but you can dispense the medicine, but not treat on site. So if you give them pills or, like a prescription, but we'll verify all that and get it to Mr. Sora.
We can certainly make council aware of that questions, and it's a very good question. I think without doing the research, I think what staff would advise at this point is that this is B1B is our least intense level of business zoning. So the things like methadone clinics and others were reserved for far more intense zoning uses, but we'll certainly verify that and make sure that you all are aware of that before you take action on it. This did come forward, I think, as Tim mentioned, from our planning commission in terms of a favorable recommendation. This does require an ordinance, first and second reading, and a public hearing to be conducted on this before final consideration and second reading. So we're a couple of months into this, or we'll be a couple of months into this. and we'll have it on our November 10th agenda.
And Tim, Bill, just for clarification, should, we move forward with the Planning Commission's recommendation, if there was the desire to have a special use permit used, does that land with planning and then come back to council, or does it just land with planning?
It's just with planning, just with the Planning Commission.
Right.
And to clarify also, Tim, you said you had 2 residents that in writing gave us they were positive about this. Were they adjacent to the property or just in the neighborhood, or do you know where they were located?
I think one of them was a property owner. You have those letters in your packet.
Mm-hmm.
One of them was the 1741 King College Road property owner, Mr. Harris. And the other one was the church, the actual owner of the property of the church. So that's the only 2 parties we have heard back from are the 2 property owners. Haven't heard anything from adjacent property owners at this time.
Anything else on this subject? Okay, we'll move on to the next item.
Okay. Yes, Mayor, you may recall from our October 6th meeting, there were 3 individuals appointed to the Board of Zoning Appeals, Mr. Dustin Goforth, Mr. David Rudd, and Mr. Joel Staten. The terms, however, of their office at the desire of council is to be placed on the agenda for consideration or for discussion during today's work session. As you may recall, when the Board of Zoning Appeals was reconstituted, I think in 2007, our ordinance called for 5 individuals to be appointed for 5-year terms, but the initial appointments would be for staggered appointments of 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, respectively. So that wasn't done in 2007. So we've revamped that, and we have 3 individuals that have been appointed to the board. So now it's up to City Council to determine which of those individuals will serve which of those 5 terms. So with that, and once I think you all reach that consensus today, then we will have that again by resolution on our November 10th agenda to formalize that.
Suggestions?
Yeah, one of the things that I had mentioned was that we've got, certain members, in particular, Joel Staten has a lot of experience on the planning commission and many other boards of the city, served as mayor. I think he's got a really good grasp of what's going on with that. And so I was going to suggest that he be our person that would serve for 5 years, if he would be willing to do that, and I think he'd be really good in that respect. So that's where I come from as far as the 5-year goes. I was impressed with Mr. Rudd's resume as well, and felt.
He's muted.
Yeah, we've lost your sound, Chad. You appear to be muted.
Sorry about that. Did I get through Joel? I got through Joel,
You got
right?
through Joel, yes.
As far as the 4-year term, I like Mr. Rudd for that. I felt he had a really good resume. I talked with him on the phone, emailed with him, liked him, and also liked Dustin Goforth as well. So if I had a choice in the for these 3, I would ask that Joel Staten serve the 5-year term, David Rudd the 4-year term, and Dustin Goforth to serve the 3-year term. And then as we have others that apply for the other 2 spaces, decide then about them.
I can support that.
I can too. That sounds great.
As well.
Okay, I've got 5 years then for Joel, 4 years for David, and 3 years for Dustin. And we'll formalize that in a resolution for your consideration in November.
And just for clarification, what is our process now for the other 2 seats?
They have until midnight on Tuesday before your next meeting. So there's actually another week beyond what we would normally have. So we will receive applications midnight Tuesday, November 3rd, for consideration on the November 10th meeting. And just prior to this meeting, I was informed that we have had no applications for those vacant positions as of this point.
Thank you.
And we could, if we do, then we can do what Chad suggested. At that time, it'll be a whole lot easier with fewer applicants to, at that time, designate who gets a 1 year or 2 year.
Could we even at that time, as we vote, put beside each names what year, a 2 year or 1 year, and then it's kind of like a one and done, and
Right.
whoever the most that gets the 2 year, the most that gets the 1 year, whatever, it's done. They're selected, their year selected, and we move forward.
What I would suggest is when you get to that point on your agenda on November 10th, assuming we have 2 candidates,
Right.
and talk that through amongst yourselves at that point, and set forth something just like you mentioned, Lee, as a way to decide that tiebreaker, so to speak. You may only have 1 candidate, and it may not be an issue.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Anything else on this subject? Okay, we'll move on to city manager's comments.
Okay, I'll run through a few things. We're on a pretty good time schedule today. Tonight, I would like to remind council, tonight is our second of the meetings with individuals interested in the East Cedar Street project. That was pretty well attended last Tuesday night, our first meeting. The meetings are conducted in the gymnasium at Slater Center, and it will be at 6 o'clock. Next on our agenda, or next on my comments, I think some of you, or probably all of you, received an email yesterday from our school system. They are canceling the November 3rd grand opening ceremony or celebration for the new middle school gymnasium due to the increase of the COVID-19 virus in our community, and to Dr. May's point, avoid large gatherings. So, and by the way, as far as our meeting tonight, I know Mayor Luttrell was at the last meeting. Terry Napier's done an excellent job of positioning seats within that gymnasium, that it does allow for social distancing. We have 3 TVs that 3 large screen TVs that for PowerPoint presentations, and all individuals in the going into that area are required to have masks.
So Bill, can I ask, and I know we have a whole PR plan for the Cedar, but for these meetings, are we gonna put that PowerPoint or recording of the meeting online where people can see it, or what's the plan with?
It is being recorded, and the best of the 2 meetings will be posted.
Okay, great. So anybody watching here who doesn't feel comfortable coming, they can watch, for that's going to be getting out there and be pushing that. Thank you. I think that's really critical. Thanks.
Next, I'd like to have some discussion regarding our November 10th meeting. It's Tuesday. This is normally the week in which the governor would issue another executive order, as is one for October, will expire over the weekend. We don't know at this point what the governor will do in terms of allowing us. Margaret, you look perplexed.
I thought we'd already seen stuff.
I haven't seen it.
Not yet. So I thought we saw some stuff that it's not official.
It extended it through October and the conditions in which we could meet.
Okay.
What I would like to do today, I suspect we will see something tomorrow or Thursday. I imagine we will hear something from the ERG group. I know I brought this up a couple of weeks ago, and they were unsure at that point. But I think everything, if history repeats itself as it has, I think we'll have that ability.
Right.
moving forward. But is it the desire of council to conduct our business meeting in November as we have in recent months? If we have the ability to do that.
Yes.
I feel like at this point, with as red as we are with the White House zone and et cetera, that would be wise to do that.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And then the National League of Cities, the conference is normally in November, as you're aware. Months ago, NLC made a decision to conduct that as a virtual conference. And I'm signed up for it. I think Margaret has signed up for it. There's still time to sign up everyone else if you're interested in participating in the virtual conference. I did this through ICMA a couple of months ago. And while it's disappointing to not have some of the networking opportunities that you have with a live conference, I've got to say the ICMA conference was excellent. And I know, as some of you have expressed in the past, it never fails that there's one time slot, that there's 3 sessions you'd like to see, and then the time slot behind that, there's nothing that you're interested in. Virtual conferences allow you to really take advantage of those sessions that are of most interest to you. So if you're interested in doing that, we still have time to get you registered, so please let us know. And then the last thing, as you're aware, Bristol served as the host for last year's annual Tri-Cities legislative meeting with our delegation in Nashville. This year it is Kingsport's turn. Staff is of the 3 cities are in the process of developing an agenda. If you would like to submit things to either myself or to Danielle regarding any items that you would like to see considered, we will bring those items back to you during our normal process. But the thing I wanted to speak to you most about today is Chris McCart has been in conversation, city manager in Kingsport, has been in conversation with Anna Winrow, which serves both Kingsport and Johnson City in the capacity as a lobbyist. And Ms. Winrow is advising them that it doesn't look right now like there'll be these traditional day on the Hill events this year, unless there's a drastic change in the status of this virus. So certainly more will be known as we get into December, and caucuses determine their leadership, and these how they will conduct their business going forward will be a little better understood. But right now, she's encouraging us not to travel, not to try to plan an event that travels to Nashville. We can do virtual events. That's what the Association of Lobbyists are talking amongst themselves to encourage their clients to do virtual events with the legislative delegation. Or we could, Kingsport is hosting it this year. We could look at something at Meadowview in a large area where social distancing would not be a challenge. So much to be talked about between now and then, but I wanted to bring make council aware of where that event stands, at least at this point. Are there questions regarding that event? Hearing none, Mayor, that concludes my comments.
Okay, we'll roll into city council comments.
I can go first. I guess the couple of things that I would just reemphasize the COVID, and we certainly are in a lot worse shape than we were in March and April. And Lee, thanks for your reminders, et cetera. So, and particularly, we do hope to keep our citizens safe and also keep kids in school if at all possible. So following those directives. And I know, we just had fall break, and I'm sure that was difficult for folks. We have Thanksgiving and Christmas. This is high holiday time for getting together with families. So figure out, can people forego stuff one year and I know we're going to be looking hard at what we can do as our family living in different places. Also with COVID, just a reminder, as said before, for expectations, both what we as City Council expect from our staff, as well as from community members, and also from ourselves, that this is very stressful time. There's a lot more to layers to everything we do, and just recognizing that that doing the best job now may not be as high a standard as we would normally have, and just trying to have understanding, patience, and particularly to not pressure with expectations. And with that, I would also really want to thank all of our staff for everything they do. And just to make a comment, with thanks to our community relations department, and looking at what we've got going, and just talking with folks recently about BTS's recognition with their gigabyte capabilities and connectiveness. Just thinking with our PR and community relations that we have valued so much, that it would be great to be looking at how do we build that capacity. That we've got folks stretched pretty thin and doing a fantastic job, but are there ways that that community-wise, not just with our city, but to build that capacity and to take advantage of where we are at this time period. So just those couple of things, and then a couple of dates. There's probably more, but for any folks out there who would like to learn more about how to do Zoom, there's going to be a class that the library is doing on October 29th at 6:30. It will be by Zoom, so you have to at least know how to get on, but it'll help you with the ins and outs of details with it. So encourage folks to look at that. And also Theater Bristol, who, the arts have really are really struggling during this time with not being able to have in-person events and not be able to have enough audience folks to make things profitable. Theater Bristol has done War of the Worlds. It's available through and Vince, you can fill in. It's available on their website to listen to, but WETS radio station is going to do it on the 29th at 8 p.m. And they're in the process of getting set up to do Dickens' Christmas Carol with radio theater as well. So want to say kudos to them for picking things up and keeping us entertained and tuned in and working with our families and our community. So I think that's it for now. Thanks.
Okay, I'll go ahead and jump in to tell on the comments about BTES and their capacity. I think we have a great opportunity right now to sell that to not just locally, but across the country and across the world. I mean, there's a potential of being able to attract new households, new people to come to our community, knowing that they can reach out all over the world and telecommuting and work. So we need to try to get aggressive in that arena. And I think with all the great work that BTS has been doing and the collaboration that we have with them, we really need to try to capitalize, because I'm concerned at some point in time, not this year, 2 years down the road, we're going to miss out on that opportunity. Others are going to be catching up to what we have. So now's the time. Secondly, I would like to discuss with council or to suggest to council that we reach out to NetRep and NETA to have a conversation discussion with regards to tourism for our area. See what they have to offer, see what they can present to us, because we know that that's a very important part of what we do. And in the spirit of cooperation and talking about regionalism, I think this is an element that, you know, we could have some good dialogue with. So with that, I'd just like to throw it out for comment.
I like that suggestion, man. I think that's a great idea. It also would give us a chance to learn a little bit about what specifically they do, and in regards to NetRep, other areas that what they do, and get a better understanding of what they do and that. So I think it's a great suggestion.
I agree. I'd really like to hear from both of them. I know Netta is wired in with the state to a great degree, and NetRep with their focus on event development and promotion, as well as I know one of the things that they've talked about is that in trying to increase population. So I think it would be great. And, you know, I think there's been a gross misconception as to where we are with regionalism. I think Richard Venable said it very well at the aerospace dedication this past Thursday, is that, you know, most definitely where we can work together regionally, we want to work together regionally, and realizing that there are some areas that are not as easily. But tourism is definitely one of those areas where we have a broader brush to paint with, and I think it'd be exciting to hear from Netta and NetRep. I'm really looking forward to that.
Are you thinking maybe that, or I'll ask this to Bill, would we be able, would we be open to like a presentation of some sort, either by Zoom or whatever, or how is the best way to do that, Bill?
Probably just as you discussed, you know, listening to your conversations today, what I'm envisioning, and tell me if I'm wrong, because we want to craft this so that it meets the needs of council, but we would have during a work session, a presentation made by Netta as you know, exactly what they do, how they market, what their where their funding comes from, just, you know, basically what is Netta all about. And then we've all heard and discussed NetRep and the emphasis that NetRep has placed on outdoor recreation that this region has to offer, and their desire to be a leader in the marketing of that type of tourism opportunities. So I would have them to speak on that. I would contact Mitch and Elisa or Alicia out of those two groups, and have them come to a future work session, probably the November work session, and have them brief council on their organizations, what they're currently doing, and what they see going forward.
I think that's great. I think for us to be educated, because I know a little bit, but I certainly don't know all the ins and outs. And the other is it affords our community members to learn. And I know I've had some economic development discussions during the time I was mayor, et cetera. And it's hard for our citizens to know what's going on and understand and know what the different roles are. So I think any opportunities we have for sharing that and learning at the same time is a great idea. And to piggyback on what's been said, I too believe that we have a tremendous opportunity with BTES. There is an ad out right now that from the governor of South Dakota, and she talks about the opportunities there, and it's a great overlay as to economic development opportunities as well as tourism opportunities. We have about $54,000 that is not going to be or is not currently earmarked for marketing. And so I would love for staff to have a conversation with BTS staff as to how perhaps there could be a match to some degree of those marketing dollars. It'd be lovely if they would do a 2-to-1 match, but see if we can't get a really great campaign going, if possible, on a national level, where we see so many of these states that are where businesses are leaving. Not to be unkind, but to say, you know, businesses are leaving parts of our country, whether it's because of regulations, whether it's because of the tax structure, for whatever reason, and to encourage them to consider
our area as a good home. And I don't know, we've got some money that was not picked up and that's earmarked for marketing, and I'd love to see us put that money to good use in the short term, because as Malin said, if we wait, much longer, we know we've got, Vince, you can speak to this probably as well or better than any of us. We've got a 10 gigabit. We've got supportive TVA. We've got a lot as far as our infrastructure. And my gosh, you can't compare our quality of life. So would love to see us get on this sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and when we became a 1 gigabit community, we were a little late getting focused on marketing to any degree on that. So it'd be great to move faster at this point.
Well, and you often see, I know when I first came onto council, I knew that the platform for the gigabit had been developed and a lot of that work had been done here. And CBS did a huge expose about Chattanooga and how they had the fastest internet connectivity and was comparable to Silicon Valley. And I called leadership here and I said, well, I thought that was our story. And my understanding is that that is our story and always has been our story, and that there was an exchange of different platforms and there was collaboration, and that Chattanooga got the bigger grant, which allowed them to have greater marketing dollars. And so for those that believe that Chattanooga is the only one in our region that has this type of connectivity, it's shame on us for not making it better known to not only our immediate region and state, but to the nation, because we do have the fastest connectivity in the nation. There is no one that connects faster than BTES.
So, Lee, can I ask you, you mentioned $54,000. Is that something earmarked? Is that something earmarked within our public relations department or something for advertising we haven't used, or where is that money? What is that?
It was marked. Mr. Soar can speak to that probably better than I
That
can.
was if you recall, there was initially $124,000 budgeted for the CVB, but that was contingent upon a restructuring, and that restructuring didn't go forward. So there is still a commitment of the $75,000 to fund the CVB, and so you've got the delta there that's available for another purpose.
Well, you mentioned the governor of South Dakota and the commercials. You'll see those on a lot of the business networks, and it is unbelievably inexpensive to advertise in that fashion on those networks. So it would be good if we had an idea of cost and how we can. You mentioned nationwide. I think that is but really a heavy concentration in the 5 to 8 state area that's in close proximity to us. And that all of those places are in very, very short distance from us.
Right.
Usually, at least the 5 states is within an hour, and the 8 state area is within 3 or 4 hours. So I think a plan for that, and as Malin put that, some urgency to it. And I agree with a 2-to-1 match from BTS. Vince, so just make that happen, okay?
I think we could do better than that.
Yeah, I think we could too.
Hey, Chad, I think we have a perfect trifecta here, because not only would we, because we have all the elements, we have the traditional economic development with the incredible infrastructure. We have the quality of life. We have the different tourism aspects to it. So I think that, and to your point, I think that's great, within the 8 state region. One reason that I had suggested that we look at this nationally is because a lot of people aren't necessarily leaving these our immediately surrounding states. They're some of them are in great place. I don't think that's a reason not to advertise there, but I do think to get on the national stage, especially with the Northeast and the Northwest, Southwest as well. So I think it could be something just tremendously exciting, and I'm really looking forward to hearing about the conversations.
Can I ask also too, Bill, what you mentioned National League of Cities and I guess a virtual, they're going to do a virtual type webinar, I'm going to assume. What is the cost for each council member to do that?
I don't recall off the top of my head, Chad. It's certainly not as significant as the in-person type thing because of the travel expenses. I think it was, and I did the early registration. It was less than $200, as I recall.
Oh, okay. We all should do that
for the entire conference. I mean, it's compared to typical travel. It was significantly discounted, and comparing it to the ICMA that I did in September, this was good stuff, and it was in a format that if you were interrupted and you're in your office and you had to take care of something, you could stop the presentation, handle what you needed to handle, and go back to the presentation. The ICMA is even open to revisit those sessions through the end of the year, and whether NLC will have that or not, I don't know. But it was a good way to attend a conference.
What's the dates on that?
It's the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and I think Saturday prior to Thanksgiving. Let me open up.
I don't think it's Saturday. I think it's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Usually it goes till Saturday, but I don't know that the virtual does. It's the 18th, 19th, and 20th.
And the 20th, yeah. And again, I don't know if it goes to the 21st. I usually have a 5-day work week calendar. So, but think in terms of 18th, 19th, and 20th anyway.
And my guess is normally they have the recordings, like the audio recordings of different workshops. So my guess is they'll make available to attendees the workshops so you can go back when you had coinciding interests or had to take business, do something else and not be able to attend something. So
I also think
I think it was a little more than that. I think it was more like $395 or something.
Again, it wasn't, but
compared to going in person. And we know from attending that a lot of those are PowerPoint presentations with people talking over, which can certainly be done successfully virtually. I've done one conference for nonprofit on collective impact that went well and they even did breakout sessions that also went well. With National League of Cities, I'm sure their technology is going to be top notch to be able to handle and make it a smooth experience for everybody.
Well, I would think that they have all their classes and things lined up by now as well. So I think we should do that. I want to do it. So put me down to do it. Yeah. I also think that where appropriate, it would be really good for staff members to attend where appropriate, because I can't tell you how many times I've been in in a classroom learning and all of a sudden go, I wish I had somebody, like
wish Tom Anderson. Terry.
Yeah, Tom Anderson. I mean, really, Tom. Tim Beavers as well, and a lot of stuff that John Luttrell and Terry Napier. Everybody, really. I mean, but there's a lot of places that I think we all could learn from, and they probably already get training in other areas as well. So maybe talking out of school with that, but if we can, there's certain I think good learning sessions for all, in that.
If it's a desire for the four of you, like I said, Margaret's already signed up. If it's a desire for the other four, I'll go ahead and have Velma take care of that this afternoon.
Okay.
Right. And in the past, when we've gone, sometimes, you couldn't get into a session because it was already pre-filled. But so in this situation, everything is open because it's virtual. And is it going to be archived so that we can refer back to it?
That's the way the ICMA was. I suspect NLC, those two organizations are connected at the hips. I suspect NLC will very much mirror the ICMA conference. But yes, it's archived, and ICMA is open through December 31st to go back and look at sessions or pick up sessions that you didn't get an opportunity to see earlier.
Sometimes there's a time limit on the archiving.
Yeah, there's no question. This is a great investment.
So I'll finish up. Margaret, I think Margaret was on the housing webinar also, I listened to it, a lot of good information on there. And I think, if you wind it up into one or two sentences, what we are doing is what we need to be doing. We are making changes, and we are giving incentives, and that's what they talked about is get creative with your incentives and things that you can do. Look at what caters to your community. And so I see us doing that right now. Also a compliment to Terry Napier and all the work that the city has done in and around our pickleball courts. We have, I can't tell you, I mean, we have hundreds of citizens who are so involved in this sport since the spring that it's pretty unbelievable. It's an outdoor sport. You can social distance. And so really want to say thanks for putting, an emphasis on it. And it really is good all the way around. The only one thing though that I was going to ask if there's any way, and I said that I would ask this question about areas like Anderson courts where we do not have bathroom facilities. Is there anything in any other areas like porta potties or anything like that that could be used there? Was something that I kind of heard multiple times, and but just worth the conversation. And the last thing that I wanted to mention too was I've had several folks that I've talked to about our homeless population here, and depending on what happens with the election, if the casino does come through, there's a lot of folks that are concerned about increases, and actually it's somewhat inaccurate information. There are studies out there that show that the homeless population only increases with the general population of the public. But I think we all need to hear from the experts. Christina Blevins has got a lot of information and helped me with is it Bristol's
It's Family Promise.
Family Promise.
And Melissa Roberts is helping, and Dottie Havlick is the current president. So
yes, Melissa is she's been heading that up. Margaret, you could probably elaborate on this. What, 2, 3, 4, 5 months, I guess. She's been, and she has talked to a lot of folks. There's a lot of good stuff that's happening over on the Virginia side of town with what's the name of the facility, Margaret?
Vision Center.
Vision Center. I really think we need to carve out a little bit of time sometime at one of our work sessions and get good information so that we can talk with our citizens when they have questions and thoughts. And, also another thing, it was about, if we do have a casino that comes about crime. And a lot of that stuff is misinformation, and they have statistics on all of that stuff. And I was amazed. And I think really, folks that come into the picture, that start really thinking about it hard and heavy right now, they don't know where we've been. And we've been working on this for years and years and years. And just since I've been on the city council, we've had multiple meetings, and specific to this. Sometimes it was triggered by an event or something that happened in the downtown area. But other times it's just in our coffee with the council sessions downtown and that kind of thing. So I just think that if we are well versed on accurate information, we can pass that along to our citizens, and our citizens may end up, listening in on our work session that might be formed at. So that's all I got.
Margaret, if we had a speaker to attend a work session in November, December, January, somewhere in that time frame, I know you're the closest member of council to that to that community that provides these types of support services. Who would you recommend to? Would it be Melissa Roberts to speak to this issue?
I think we've talked about spokespeople, and Melissa is employed actually by Bristol's Promise, so trying to keep those, it's hard enough, people are confused. So, but I'd say 2 or 3 people, Dottie Haplick as president of Family Promise, and then Melissa Roberts. And Christina would be good to add some things too. And just of note on that, 2 things. One is Chad is correct with some of the information, and they've done a little bit of research looking at other areas that had casinos come in, et cetera. But we're also in uncharted territory with COVID, and really seeing increase in needs and anticipating seeing more in the next few months, and not knowing, particularly right now with folks, and most of them are working folks who have been using that extra money to pay for rent, et cetera, or mortgages during this time when they maybe can't work full time because they're on child care or other different things. So we're seeing an uptick in homelessness and think that may continue. So it's a different time right now, period. The other thing relating to housing and homeless is, and we're no different than anywhere else and having people come and talk, but we don't have enough housing. So one of the goals of folks with homelessness is to help them stabilize with housing, and our housing authorities programs with Section 8 housing are finding that vouchers go unused because people cannot find rental housing that will take Section 8 vouchers. So it's a huge need across our country, and we're no different. And we're already seeing Planning Commission had one project come forward that has to do with housing for anticipating folks coming in with casino needing living space. We're going to be seeing more of that, and some of that may take some of our housing that's currently available to folks who have lower incomes. So it's changing already, our housing market, before it's even voted on. So anyway, learning about that, understanding the climate and where we are. Also, maybe at some point, somebody from the Realty Association to talk about housing stock and what they're seeing as well. There's a lot to know.
I was back to the homeless part of that, and I know the housing part of that is very important, but there's speculation about what the direction of the Salvation Army is going. And so, it would be nice. It doesn't have to be the same at the same time, but it would be nice to know exactly what direction they're going in. A lot of folks have said they're moving more towards a family-oriented, right. But actually I've heard just the opposite. And so
I think they're still in a process of strategic planning currently. So.
Well, I think if we ask for a presentation sometime, maybe 3 months out, 2 months out, maybe that kind of like gets the conversation moving a little quicker on their end.
Right.
On a completely different note, well, I think that's all very important and critical because housing has been a big concern. And I think that we as a city and a council have demonstrated how concerned we are about housing. I'd like to go back to 2 things that were mentioned. Number one are the restroom facilities. Just as we were able to purchase the stage to be used, I know at the track that they have those bathroom trailer type of things. It might be good to just get a cost on something like that could be moved and used at different facilities. Just a thought off the top of my head. Another thing
you've already bought one.
We've bought one.
You've already bought one with your COVID-19 money. So
Good.
we haven't received it yet, but you've already bought one.
Could we put it over at Anderson one night a week to play pickleball?
We can put it wherever you all would like. Certainly, it's a facility that would provide hygiene opportunities anytime we have an event somewhere, and that was the purpose of that. But that we haven't received delivery, but it has been procured.
See, we're ahead of our time. We're ahead of our time. Don't even know. Another thing is we've met with such great success with the gate at Stills Creek, and I know that Still Creek Park, and I know that we're talking a lot about Still Creek and some different thoughts there through that commission. And one thing that I'd like to talk about is maybe having a steel and post beam building that could be outfitted to be a multi-use facility, so that it could be set up with indoor pickleball to encourage pickleball tournaments to come into our area. The Racket Center is now going to put in, I believe it's 3 pickleballs. We've got outdoor pickleball at the Ida B. Jones. You know, if we had a steel post and beam building that had a type of floor that could be put forward for multi-use, it could also transition into maybe volleyball courts. It could transition into wrestling mats, a floor, some type of system. It would give us the opportunity for additional basketball courts. You name it, we could put a tournament in there, and to really increase our the bay lifts all ships. It would increase our occupancy tax. It would perhaps increase our sales tax revenues. It would bring more people into the community. And I agree with Chad. People are all about this pickleball. And beyond the pickleball, you know, we've got families that once we have COVID in a better place, hopefully diminished, you know, that love to travel with their kids to go to different tournaments, and where better to come than, you know, the fastest half mile, the birthplace of country music. You know, there'll be a casino here, shopping. I mean, and so a steel and post beam. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, we're getting the message. If what I would suggest is, as we, you know, we've just put one budget to bed, but we're not far. Actually, we're in the beginnings of the next one. January, we will have some type of gathering in some format to begin our budget process. And this will be our typical day-long retreat. And we strategize for things just like you're talking about. And so I would say hold on to that thought and provide us that information, as long as, along with others on council that have ideas, and NLC helps with some of those ideas too. By the way, Terra Music was kind enough to send me an email that the registration is $199. So this is a fire sale on your NLC. So let's go ahead and take advantage of that. But back to your point, Lee. Let's think about all of those opportunities and begin to put that together in a vision starting in January that culminates in the fiscal 2022 budget in June.
Well, you know, it's so important to plant seeds. Sure. Because you have to give them a little time to germinate. But I see this as an opportunity to let it pay for itself through a proper financial structuring. And not that I'm all for just spending money and slinging money in 100 different directions, but money is still relatively inexpensive right now if we needed to go that route to do something or whatever the vision is. This is just one thing. But to begin thinking about that, what can we put into place that would provide us with the return on investment that would pay for whatever it is we're trying to do, and at the same time provide additional revenues to the city. And that's all I've got.
Lee, along to your point there, if I can tag on, you know, that type of industry, I've done a lot of research on it in the sports-minded person I am. You know, those type of events you're speaking of, along with, you know, youth softball, baseball tournaments and stuff, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. And I'm sure there's a slice of that pie in there that, you know, hopefully we can get a hold of.
Well, they do the brawl in the mall with wrestling. They can only lay out 3 mats at a time. You know, you can only have 3 different competitions going on at a time. And, you know, another question in something like this is where would you put it? Accessibility, you know, you're going to put it somewhere where you can add on to it maybe at some point in time. I think I understand we have to be fiscally responsible, and I'm fiscally conservative, as I think most everyone is. But at the same time, we've got to begin visioning towards these things that as you've got more people coming in, if the casino passes, if, you know, and to build everything that's here. We have such a tremendous platform of engagement. So what can we add to that that's going to pay for itself and provide us an even greater return? Yeah. Just planting my seeds.
So reminder too that there's strategic planning going on for Steel Creek Park, which, and I would challenge it doesn't have to be at Steel Creek, but I think we do need to be strategic because there's some, every time we just visited Rooster Front and the picnic cover that's right there in the middle that is so poorly placed, that was done without a strategic plan for the layout for that area. So just being sure that we do our homework and figure out the best locations. And like you said, to be able to expand or do whatever too. So,
well, I know Parks and Rec, they're looking at a lot of different opportunities involving Steel Creek. And it's an exciting time. It sounds crazy, you know, with all of the COVID going on right now, but it's an exciting time to strategically plan and put things in place to move forward once the veil is lifted.
Terry Napier's taking notes. I can see it.
Anything else from anyone? Okay, with that, I certainly appreciate everyone's attendance today. Virtually, and again, thanks for all the support and help that our staff does each and every day. Without them, we couldn't do anything. So thank you, and we'll call this meeting adjourned.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Y'all have a good day.
You too.
Thank you.
Here's how you can make your own face covering in a few easy steps with items you can find